How's it going, folks? I have to say, it's lovely to actually see your faces this time because when I got to speak to you for season one, it was just over the phone. So it's
Yeah.
lovely to
All right.
see
Oh,
you
well,
this
lovely to see
time.
you
Nice
again.
to
Lovely to
see
speak
you.
to you.
um, Cynthia, I'm going to start with yourself because Muriel, she's gone through so much in season one and now is starting season two, shall we say, on uneven surfaces.
Yeah.
So where is her head at this season?
Gosh, I mean, yeah, it's definitely one of those things that I guess in order to have something really satisfying with the character, you've really got to put them through the ringer, unfortunately. And, you know, when we sort of are rejoining Miriel at the beginning of season two, she's experienced so much loss by the end of season one, the loss of her father, the loss of her vision, the loss of her fellow Numenorian people. And, when we are even first reintroduced to Numenor, we start at a funeral. And, really there's a sense of loss and a sense of grief throughout Numenor. And I think through that grief and loss, it's sort of, well, what's going to be on the other side of it, both for Miriel, but also for society. And that sort of the early rumblings of, uncertainty that we started to see in season one are really going to sort of become even more fractured in season two. And it's really going to be about the direction of society and which way do people want to go, or which way are people being led toward. And Miriel is very much going to be involved in that sort of split, as is this fellow over here. So it's definitely very dramatic, and as you know, with Numenor, I mean, that is sort of our sort of area to explore political intrigue and politics, and it's a very sort of rich and juicy storyline. But I think ultimately all of the challenges that Miriel does sort of endure in season two will lead her to a place of finding out and discovering who she is and who she is meant to be.
Yeah, and you kind of touched on it there that, with Farazon, we get to see him play his cards a little bit more this season. We got a little hint of it last time. So,
Yes.
Trystan, for yourself, like, to me, it's almost a little bit House of the Dragon-y. I think maybe just because it's so fresh in my head from the series.
What a season that was, by the way. I loved it.
So good.
Absolutely brilliant.
Very good. But yeah, so Farazon is kind of like, he's playing his cards, being a bit of like the Aegon of the situation, really.
Well, there is, I mean, there's a conversation definitely to be had about like whether he is the only one with any objectivity, I think, because everybody is so in the moment and led by their emotions, of whether he is a step back and less impulsive than the rest, or whether he is using Miriel as a cat's paw. You know, if Miriel's mind was already made up to go to Middle-earth, you've definitely got to find the goods in any situation. And so I just quoted Edward Longshanks from Braveheart there, by the way. The brilliant character by Patrick, who was it? Anyway, I can't remember now. The actor's a brilliant actor. But yes, so that there is a sign of good leadership. And so we see really... I guess there's this whole conversation to be had, and we'll see how it pans out for him, of whether he really did mean to use Miriel as a cat's paw, or whether he is the only one going, I've just got to clean another mess up that my cousin has made. She's come back. The reputation of Numenor is in tatters. We are in need of a facelift. How is the rest of the world going to see us? And, you know, there we are then. Accountability, responsibility at my doorstep.
Yeah. And we actually got a great clue as to, without spoiling too much, as to how the coronation scene is going to go down, because Miriel has chosen the white, the ethereal, the kind of the honouring of the Numenori past. Then we have Farazon, who was trying to encourage her to go with the red as like a vision of the future. And then we see that he is actually wearing the red. So was that a conversation that you both had with Costume beforehand, or did Costume kind of come to you and say, here you guys go, and yes, it's a little Easter egg?
Well, that was scripted, so that sort of moment was definitely conceived by our showrunners, JD and Patrick. And what is interesting about the coronation costumes, which I actually love, and I love that contrast visually, the stark contrast of the white and the red when you see us both at the coronation scene. For me, that costume was the beginning of those fittings. I think it was like the very first costume I was fit for, months in advance of actually filming that. And I feel like I can say that we filmed a version of that scene that was slightly different than what is in the final episode without getting into what that is. But I just love that, as you say, it's really about what those two sort of ideas represent and where their heads are at, now that the king has passed. Because it goes without saying that, with the king's passing is a huge shift in not just leadership, but there's opportunity presumably there as well. And so that scene, as you say, it plays out very, very dramatically. And sort of once certain things are revealed in that scene, they cannot sort of be unrevealed. They can't be unseen, as it were.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. And, pardon the pun, but Miriel, she is actually unable to see anything at all these days. And one thing that I always remember, I think it was Charlie Cox said that because he prepped so much to play Matt Murdock in Daredevil, because he was also blind as well, that he actually found himself finding it difficult to look people in the eye afterwards. Did you find anything like that yourself? Because you've done a fantastic job, I have to say.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. I think what was really tricky for me, because when I started doing research into sort of portraying blindness, when you look at even modern interpretations or portrayals of that, even with the example you gave, oftentimes there's literally something blocking the eyes or covering the eyes, sunglasses, some sort of prop that also sort of signals a blindness. In Numenor and in Middle Earth, I'm not going to sort of have anything shielding my eyes. And I actually felt the importance of being able to see my eyes, to be able to convey, those thoughts. But there was a challenge in not being able to look my fellow actors in the eye when that is something that I would normally rely on.
We tried.
Yeah.
I was going to say, you had that cheeky little grin on your face as she was saying that.
We tried. She's a consummate professional. She's a pro.
But what it does do, what is interesting, is that all of your other senses have to then make up for that. They're heightened, and therefore it is about sort of listening intently, feeling the energy shift in a room. Anytime we were in that coronation space, in that courtroom, you have a lot of other Numenorians and you have a lot of bodies in the room and you feel people shifting around. You sort of pick up on things. So certainly as an actor, the big challenge is how can you use all the other tools at your disposal if your ability to sort of literally look around is taken away. So the main thing for me is I just didn't want to sort of have Miriel flailing about, because Numenor is a place she's known her whole life. So to me, for her to have the confidence to walk in a space that she has walked her whole life, it felt like, yes, she would be able to sort of know the number of steps from point A to point B and sort of move still with authority and not feel like she's sort of grasping around in the dark. So it was very important to me that it not sort of, diminish her character, because she would have the awareness of still needing to present and convey strength and authority.
And this season, it is going to be absolutely jam-packed. I could tell just from the trailer and just from the little snippets that we've been able to see before these interviews. But for yourselves, what scene can you tease? Because I know you probably won't be able to give too many details. But what are you most looking forward to the fans seeing from both of your storylines?
See, I like the build-up of how two very different people in the way they approach things, and how they grieve this man. One, of course, he was her father, but he was my uncle as well. And despite having a sort of conflicting beliefs, then he would have been part of the faithful. I would have been part of the Kingsmen and followed my father, Gimilcad. Is that I still would have seen him as an inspiration. As a man, I would have seen him as an inspiration as well. And so there are two different ways of grieving, and how that affects two different factions in society, and how that really escalates and that goes up, it whips up into a frenzy. And that for me is the exciting bit from our point of view. I think how it affects those little family, those little moments of grief there, these little emotions that are not little at all, but how it just sort of escalates, and how other people are inadvertently affected by how you feel at a certain moment in time. I quite like that.
When the darkness falls, there are always some who rise forth and shine.